Okay, since I'm going to go over a few of these problems on this page, notice you're doing the odds as it says here. You're going to do it on a separate sheet of paper, staple it to this one. And in 4:1 proportions, even though this, everything with an equal sign is an equation, this is a specific type of equation called proportion, which means a fraction equaling a fraction or a ratio equaling another ratio. It tells you how to do it. Cross multiply, set equal each other, and then solve for the variable. That will always work. But what you can also do is simplify fractions if they simplify first to get down to smaller numbers, or to go ahead and check if something makes it simpler. So for example, number 8, if I simplify the 30 over 14, that becomes 15 over 7. Well, notice the only difference between this denominator and this denominator is a negative sign. So I multiply by a negative here, I multiply by a negative up there, it doesn't change. So now I have negative 7s, and then so the numerators must be equal. 12q equals negative 15. And last step, divide by 12 and simplify the fraction down to negative 5/4. And there's your answer. So in that case, you see by simplifying the fraction and seeing I could just multiply by -1 over -1, because that's still the same thing as 1. I'm not changing the problem. I could then just set the numerators equal each other. That's one way of doing it. Let's do another way. Let's just say you just cross multiply right away. I'd have 14 times 12 equals 30 times -7. I got a Q over here. Okay. Well, notice I didn't multiply them out, because again, I could sit there and say, okay, let's divide by 14 here first. And then I'll cancel down to -1 right there and a 2 here. And then 30 divided by 2 is 15. So I'm at -15 right there, equals 12q. And I'm back to where I started, where I could divide by 12 and simplify that down to -5/4. Now, if you have a calculator, you could put all that in your calculator and not do any simplifying and just multiply straight across. And you have 140 times 14 times 12 is 140, plus 28 is 168q equals -210. And divide by 168 on both sides. And that'll give you a decimal, and then you hit math, enter, enter, and that will give you -5/4. Okay, so 3 different ways that you can do it. If you want to simplify, get smaller numbers, or become just totally calculator dependent and just cross multiply right away and do that. Okay. Now let's do another one where I have a binomial, two terms in both of them. Let's say number 12 here. Okay. Since I have 2 terms in this numerator, I need to put parentheses on it, and I need to put parentheses on that one, because I need to make sure I distribute through. Remember, we're cross multiplying. So if I do that, I have 8 times the quantity 6p minus 2 equals 7 times the quantity 5p plus 7. Okay, you've done all this since 7th grade. You've done proportions since 7th grade. Okay, I'm going to distribute that through because 8 does not divide by 7 evenly, or 7 into 8 evenly. So I'm going to just distribute, and I get 48p minus 16 equals 35p plus 49. Now I ask myself, which variable coefficient is smaller, the 35. I always want to take the smaller variable to the bigger number side, so that I end up with a positive. So since I'm moving the variables to the left, the constant must go to the right. Okay, so I get 13p equals 59 plus 6 is 65. And last step, divide by 13, and I get p equals 5. Okay, I could check if I plug it back in, and it would work. Okay, so that covers everything at the top. In the top portion here in 4-1, you just cross multiply and set them equal to each other and solve. Okay, let's go ahead and go down to the bottom portion. Notice I've given you a hint here. Just like my directions are usually on the right side, I didn't have room on the right side, so I just typed them right there. Remember, use reverse order of operations. Reverse PEMDAS. Same thing. That's called the reverse order of operations. Okay, notice I even said add or subtract terms across. If I'm taking an entire term, I'm adding or subtracting it. That's always my first step. Okay, whenever you're adding or subtracting, you're moving entire terms across. Remember, terms are separated by plus or minus signs. So let's look at number 2. I have 2 terms on the left and 1 on the right. Obviously, I want to solve for t. I have to get rid of the 5, which is an entire term by itself. So I'm adding or subtracting. I'm doing the opposite operation and moving across. And I get 4t equals 32. And last step, when I'm only getting rid of part of a term, such as 4 here, I'm multiplying or dividing. This is not dealing with exponents at all. And I get t equals 8. Okay, 2 steps, very simple. Okay, reverse PEMDAS. Okay, let's pick another one. Here we go with decimals, number 12. Remember, because you're doing the odds. I'm going to add the 4.9 across. Because again, this 2.4, the coefficient of the m that I'm solving for is already positive, so I'm going to leave it on that side. So add 4.9, and I get 11.4 equals 2.4 m. And then I just go ahead and put on my calculator, 2.4 divided by 2.4. Okay. And I'm going to go ahead and work it out longhand. I could multiply both by 10, and I have then 114 divided by 24. This is times 4, it's 96. Enough with 18. So my remainder is now 18 over 24. Okay, 4 and 18, 24 is my answer. Okay, and of course 18, 24 is the GCF is 6. So I can divide each by 6, and I get 3/4, 4 and 3/4. So if you put in a calculator, it's going to give you 4.75 for your answer. Okay, if you're doing it all on a calculator, I showed you how you can do it all by hand right here. Okay. Next, let's look at 18. When I have one written as a fraction, the other's not, I'm going to write them both as a fraction and then cross multiply like we did up top in 4-1 on the top part of the page. So I cross multiply, I get negative 24 equals 1 times the quantity 5f plus 1, which is then just 5f plus 1. I'm just multiplying by 1. That's already positive 5f, so I'm going to subtract the 1 across. I get 5f equals negative 25. And last step, divide by 5, and I get f equals negative 5. And we'll do one more, say number 14 here. Reverse PEMDAS again. So I add the 8 across. I'm moving an entire term across, so it's add or subtract. So I'm left with d over 4 equals 3. And remember, I can write that as 3 over 1, and then I could cross multiply, and I get d equals 12. Okay, that's the same thing as multiplying by the reciprocal of 4, because that means 1/4 d. The reciprocal will be 4. Whatever you do to one side, you do to the other side. 3 times 4 is 12. So you can see you get the same answer whether you set up as a proportion and cross multiply, or if you just multiply by the reciprocal of 1/4 being 4. Okay, so that covers every type of problem. Well, 7, you would combine like terms first. Okay, so it covers all your problems that you need to know for today's assignment. If you're doing the odds on a separate sheet of paper, staple it to it, you should be able to finish in class and then start working on any missing assignments you haven't finished up earlier and get those turned in as well.